Is this what you expected to see when you open up an Outer Circle video? Me holding an Age of Sigmar battle tome for the Nighthaunt. And an Age of Sigmar army of Nighthaunt. Okay, the story for this begins back when they released the Nighthaunt army. Myself, I'd always been a big fan of more evil factions, chaos, the undead, that kind of thing. So when I finally am old enough and got enough money, I wanted to make a Vampire Counts army. Thing is, at that point in time, they started discontinuing Warhammer Fantasy in favour of Age of Sigmar, which at the time they did it was a clusterfuck. Let's be brutally honest here. Well, flash forward a few years, and Age of Sigmar version 2 is in a pretty good place, I think. And the release of the Nighthaunt army gave me a lot of hope. Because this is an army that I just loved. I even did a video about how good I think it looked, and the theme, and how much better it was than other factions within the game, and how it wasn't comical and silly like the others. It was almost like a return to the old world. Well, I decided to buy one. And I've mostly painted it at my local Games Workshop store using a lot of their standard technical paints. A lot of Nilica Oxide, Etheric Blue, whatever it is, those kind of colours, Nighthaunt Gloom. These colours have got me across the line with this army. And today I want to talk a little bit about it, show off some models, why I've picked the colours I have, the theme I'm going for, things I have to do in future, and even a model I'm working on for it when I get around to finishing it. So, first things first, I started with the Lady Olinda and the Banshees and the Memo and Banshees. And so the thing was, I'm like, how do I want to construct this army? What am I doing it for? And I really just did it for a painting project. After Armies on Parade, I treated myself to a couple of models. Was like, okay, I want to paint these. And then I got a few vouchers in that from other competitions at a friendly local gaming store, and used those vouchers to buy most of the other stuff. Traded for the Wraith Cavalry off Mate Dom, Fabricator General. Look him up on Instagram, awesome stuff. I had the Mongol already sitting around. I'll talk more about that when the time comes, but let's start looking at some of the models. So first off, the Lady Olinda. I hated the stock base that these models came on. They came on a sort of, see if I can get a better focus here. Oh, that's not it, that's not it. There's something wrong with that. They came on this really tiny little stem that the bottom of her cloak attached to. I ended up using some old Middle-earth ruins from the original Return of the King release that I had laying around. Some Dryad branches, some tufts, some wet effects in order to create this sort of slightly swampy, marshy, hinting at like a graveyard or a ruined castle style of base. And so that's the look I went for with this army. And I'm really happy with how Lady Olinda turned out. My process is to use a Vallejo white for my base coats, and then to put on a mix of Nighthaunt Gloom and Nilic Oxide, and then I use a Vallejo white, Bianco white I think it is, to blend it out and feather it out. I find the Games Workshop ones just don't do it for me, for a couple of reasons, the biggest of them being dropper bottles. I prefer using dropper bottles for white. I find it easier when I'm mixing it up and getting my consistencies. Of course, after her, we'll go on to Kurtos Valentian, who, same thing really. I used some leftover candles from the Spirit Host bases in order to accessorize his a little, and the same sort of broken column. Some tombstones I had laying around. Again, same theme, really wanted to bring him out. I've gone for the brown leather on all of these sort of wraiths, almost like it's the shroud they were buried in, is my personal style. And although you won't see it in the video, there's a lot of different shades to the rock, which was done by using Army Painter washes. But you could use Games Workshop ones like Seraphim Sepia, that kind of thing. But I use Brown Wash, Strong Tone, that kind of thing from Army Painter to add in some green, some purple tints into the rock on his throne. And I think the hardest part to blend was this really strong blend across here. And you can still see it's pretty sharp. I roughed it out using the airbrush with white and black, as you can see from the underneath, and I've just really thinly painted over it in layers. It's kind of worked, kind of hasn't. I think I need to refine it a little bit more, but he's perfectly playable as he is. Reikenor the Grimhailer, another fun one, but look, this sap fit sort of models are an absolute pain in the ass when you're working on them. Hexwraith Flame or something is this green colour, and it's really strong and it has a tendency to pool, which again makes blending in that a bit funny with the stuff. There's parts of this model I'd have loved to have painted separately, because all that the rider is held on by is his little wrist in here, which is not ideal. As his base was already accessorized, all I did was just add a little lavender and some grass to it, because he already has the theme, essentially. Then we've got my Knight of Shrouds. So I think this is second or third miniature I painted in the army. So same deal, he's got the little bits of wetland and stuff, and some rocks in the base, just to give it that gloomy look. I think I need to just airbrush in gently, perhaps some purple tones into the base more. Just give it a little bit more contrast, a little bit more something to make it stand out, perhaps. The silver is literally just two types of silver to paint the helmet. Don't know if I'll be able to get it to focus in, but I will try. The lens I'm using today is just sort of a generic zoom lens. Yeah, it's just two silvers. Base coat of one silver, then heavy wash, then stippling and streaking with the same silver again. I've also got my Executioner, so same look, going for the cloak. So we've got the rocks on the base and that. He's got the leather sort of shrouded cloak. The timber I used a lot of greens and purples in. Purples wherever the joints in the timber meet, where the nails are and that, to represent sort of being more damp and the moisture building up in it and collecting and pooling in those areas, just to makes it a little more realistic. Otherwise, really easy miniature to paint because there weren't really that much stuff to blend on it, really. You can see that the sort of contrast type paint is doing a lot of the work in the greens here, just its natural pooling over the white base coat, blending it in. So, easy model. Then we've got the Jailer, another fun, simple one. Again, very easy to paint. All I'm doing is blending those just slight bits of purple into the ends of the sort of etheric robes that he's wearing, I suppose you'd call them. And I've tried to go just a shade lighter on their skin as opposed to their blue cloaks. Varying results over the army. Alright, then we've got my Memo and Banshees. So on these ones, same white base coats, and then I've tried to feather in to the white as opposed to blending the white over the top with the colours. And it's worked, but you can see some definite lines, like around here on the cloak. Again, hard to focus it, where I haven't blended it well. It's the downside of analog brushing, I'm afraid. So they were a pretty fun little part of the army. I thought they looked great. Lady Linda looks great, and also her handmaidens, we'll call them. These girls. So white base coat again, of course. I've gone for the Nilic oxide around where the cloak, the undercloak sort of meets their white shawl on top. So other than that, it's almost just one colour consistently carried over the miniature. So quite quick to paint. Blade Geist Revenants are one of the newer ones I've added to the army. They have that same leathery look. See if I can zoom in, perhaps that might help. No promises. Oh, I feel like I should have done this from the start, guys. A little bit easier to see. So the brown is a contrast. I think it's Sigmar brown, painted thinly over the white, and then darkened up a little with some dark oath flesh. So yeah, I'll show another one of those off while we're here. Same approach with the metals. And of course the Ghast Reapers. Tried to keep the chainmail very rusty on them. Almost the same colour brown as their cloaks, just to help blend it in. Kept the timbers very damp wood sort of style, and used a lot of Nilica oxide when shading in the bell. As I say, the white blends down through the blue with a sort of touch of green. Again, very easy to blend in, just thin the green right out. And just a touch of red, which is just done with a wash, an army painter red wash. I'll use this chance to see if I can also show some of the stonework on Kurdos's base. So, pretty happy with how he came out. Alright, then we've got the Spirit Hosts, same style of bases, just that slight bit of purple blending, and mostly just a very thin wash of that etheric blue contrast to get me over the line. Alright, the Mongol. Mongol was going to be for a 40k Demons project. Just zoom out a little bit. He's the big boy. So I'd already got rid of the rider and replaced it with this rock on the base. So he's holding onto a rock. The same purples are being used at the extremities and around the mouth, where I've used a lot of red and purple shades. It's a creepy model, and they're huge. For those who haven't seen how big a Mongol is, that's a Banshee, which is a Mirmorn Banshee, which is bigger than a Space Marine. Space Marine comes up to about her pelvis in height. So yeah, Mongols are huge. But because he was going to be a demon for a Demons project, I got rid of the Empire Outrider on his base, or Pistolier, that's being crushed. Originally there's a horse there that he's grabbing around, and I've replaced it all with rock. In-game, nowhere near as strong as they used to be. Apparently they were quite overpowered back in the day. Now they seem to kind of die like a bitch. Then we get to the Hex Wraith. These guys just don't fit the armies. I decided not to do any metal on them. I decided to keep them entirely etheric or ethereal. Again, using a lot of that green, highlighting the flame on them, but the little bursts of flame and such really makes them the oddballs. They stick out compared to the rest of the army with the sculpted on flames. Those who've watched the channel for a while would know I despise sculpted on flames, and this is one of the reasons why. It makes it hard to convert things and make them fit a different faction. I mean, this is the same faction, but if I hold up, say, this and this, you go, oh yeah, they look like they belong in the same army. Even if I hold up these two, the same sort of wispy cloaks, yeah, they fit together quite nicely. It's great, consistent model design across the force. But when you get to these guys, they're a completely different style of cloak, different style of model. The scythes, everything, they're just disproportionate. I don't like them. I don't really enjoy using them in game. Not many positives. The other thing I'm working on, though, at the moment, I do have a bunch of miniatures to do, but I'm working on the black coach. If I don't go dropping it over everything, I'm sure someone just cringed, but don't worry, guys, it's just plastic. Plastic is pretty damn durable. I'm painting it in pieces. I need to finish painting the underside because you'll never see it, but I will know it's there. You've got the different ghosts on top, which I painted white. I've still got to pick out all the details on them. But you've got the ghosts fleeing on the carriage and the carriage itself. This is a knight's base, by the way, again to give you some idea of size. Lady Olinda, size of a Space Marine dreadnought, next to the black coach. They're huge. That's a knight's base, and the horses completely overlap the end of it. You can see the painting style here, where I've only put a few layers on so far of the green, and it's really dull. Hasn't pooled a lot yet because I'm going so thin. That's the nature of doing it and trying to get that smooth blend in. Is many thin layers are required to get a nice looking army, in my opinion. The actual Wraith riding it, though, is pretty much there, pretty much done. So overall, the project is getting there, but I've been in no real rush, and I've been trying to get the base to match up with the other stuff. So you see there's bits of broken column down there, and down here we've got the candles, some rock, but it's a lot of work. So that's what's coming next for the Force. I've also got more Mirmorn Banshees. I've also got some more. I've got some of the, I think they're Sepulchral Stalkers or something. They're the guys with the sort of dog's heads. And sort of a halberd or glaive or spear they're carrying. Yeah, I've got some of those to do. And that's really it for this Force. Not too much more I really want to add to it. Maybe the Games Workshop Anniversary Nighthaunt miniature would be a fun one. But yeah, overall, very quick and easy to paint. As I said, I painted a lot of it in person in Games Workshop stores, and people could see my technique and how I went about things there. I have a good local store. You know, I'm not just going to dump on them because they're Games Workshop. Great group of people there and great guys that run it, so good on them. Happy to associate with them and hang out with them. And yeah, it's a fun game, Age of Sigmar 2.0. There's still a lot that needs to be done with the lore, the evolution of the story. Frankly, I think if they'd spent an extra year in development on the game, they would have done a lot more. Perhaps let the end times breathe before they rush into Age of Sigmar instead of that very flawed release. We'd have a different conversation right now. But a lot of negativity flowed, not so much from myself and this channel, because I didn't really have a horse in the race for Fantasy and Sigmar, but a lot of people were put off that were long-time customers of the company because of the hard transition between the two systems and how they frankly were not looked after by the company despite these massive armies they built up over years, and just being told that, oh, well, you know, your faction's dead, everyone in it's dead, but something that looks just like it respawned in the next world is not quite the same. So I see both sides of the problem there. In any case, lovely models, awesome theme. A new sculpt for these would go a long way. There's the Dreadblade Harrows, which is sort of like miniature Knight of Shrouds. They come in a pack of 2, and they're a hero. But even those, like 5 of those, if I bought 5 of those and converted them up with sides, they would look so much better than these things. These are horrible models. When they released, they were okay. I think the Black Knights look great, but these Wraith versions, it's the little flames, these little spurts of flame they've got all over, and I've picked out in the dark green, just they're atrocious. I suppose final thing I'll do is I'll just show a little bit more up close of some of my heroes, perhaps like Lady Olinda.